Welcome to Alasquatch, the show all about Bigfoot in the great state of Alaska. I'm your host, Beans Baxter. So lace up your boots, zip up your coat, and come with me on an adventure as we explore all things cryptid in the last frontier. Hey Alasquatchers, thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys are doing okay out there. We're right in the throes of winter here. I've got a pile of snow on my driveway that's almost as tall as I am. But I know a lot of you guys down in the lower 48 aren't doing much better. It's colder in Texas right now than it is right here where I'm sitting in Alaska. So buckle up, guys. You got to keep some spare salt, sand, and warm clothes around, extra water, food. You'll be able to get through anything. The ones I feel really bad for are the ones that have to go to work no matter what. First responders, essential workers, people like that. Because they're really at the mercy of the public works and road crews that really aren't prepared for putting up with that kind of weather. But anyway, guys, before we get started here, I wanted to throw a promo out to my good friend Adam Davies. He just had a new book come out. It's called The Revenge of the Hairy Man. It is a fictional story about Port Chatham, Alaska. It's kind of a fictional retelling of how the town might have been abandoned back in the 1950s. It's kind of I've read it. It's a pretty cool little adventure story. Again, it's a fictional story, but I mean, it's told from the perspective of somebody that's been there, so it's pretty cool. You can get that on Amazon. It's a little hard to come by. The best way I found to locate it is to search for Adam's name. It's Adam Davies. Adam, common spelling, Davies. And he's got a couple other books called Extreme Expeditions, like 1, 2, and 3. If you just click on his name, like it'll take you to his author page, and the book will be listed there. You can order it from there. That's how I did it. I got it here pretty quick, and I read it in a couple of days. It's a really good winter read, snuggling up next to the fire with your puppy on your lap, and just blaze through it. Took me a couple of days to read it, and I really enjoyed it. I think it would make a cool movie or action series. It's very kind of Indiana Jones, 30 Days of Night-ish. It's pretty cool. But anyway, today I've got something really special for you guys. I'm going to have a guest on. His name is Ryan, and he is a resident of Alaska. He had a visual sighting last summer back in July. And what's even rarer with these kind of things is he's gone back to the area and he's found some possible collaborative evidence. So we're going to get into his interview right now without delay, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Ryan, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So I brought you on here. We were going to talk about the sighting you had, and then something happened after the sighting where you found some evidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I don't want to put words in your mouth, or I don't want to keep on gabbing. So you just go ahead, take it away, man. Tell us what you saw.
All right. Sounds good. So, I guess a little background. I'm born and raised in Alaska. Love hunting, fishing, been out in the woods a lot growing up. And I've never really believed or given much thought to the existence of creatures such as Bigfoot. Just, heard, of course, stories and everything, and thought it was kind of fun, but never really anything serious or anything. And so, what happened definitely has changed my outlook. So anyways, I have a wife and a younger son, and then I was with my nephew as well. And we were on a trip this summer, this past July, and we're from Interior Alaska, and we had gone out to Manly Hot Springs. And Manly Hot Springs is a small community, just over 100 people, 156 miles from Fairbanks. So it's a pretty remote little place out there. Just a one road in and out, dirt road. And so anyways, we were out in Manly and we were heading back to Fairbanks. And this was, again, maybe third week in July or something. So, of course, tons of midnight sun. And it was a pretty hot day, probably 75 degrees or so. And we were playing a game, driving back, trying to just stay awake, be entertained on the long drive back. And so we were all kind of alert, paying attention. And we were in between Manly and Fairbanks. And again, very remote area. And we come over this crest, come over this like hill, and we see right in the middle of the road something. And this is pretty far out, probably at least 300 feet in front of us. And we see this, or I see this thing first, this huge thing that at first glance, I jokingly say to my wife and nephew, I said, wow, there goes Bigfoot. Well, at that point, I was fully thinking in my mind that it's got to be a hunter or something. I didn't even at all really think, but yet the way it was hunched and walking, that's why I jokingly at first said, there goes Bigfoot, even though I was thinking it was a hunter. And so they look up right away and they see it with me. Now, when I saw it first, it was probably right in the middle of the road and it was walking at a pretty brisk pace. And by the time they'd looked up, it was had already gotten to the edge of the road and was starting to walk down into the, off, on the side of the road into the woods. And so I probably saw it for a total of maybe 7 to 10 seconds. They probably both saw it for about 4 or 5 seconds. And this thing was probably at least 7 foot. And it looked pretty skinny. And it was hunched a little bit forward, walking with its arms kind of swinging, and its arms looked pretty abnormally long. And when we saw this thing again, after I had jokingly said there was Bigfoot, and then thinking, man, this has got to be a hunter or something. But at that point, I sped up because it was, like I said, a couple hundred feet in front of us, and I wanted to get a better look. But it didn't have any color disfiguration, like, whereas a human would have different colors on their gloves or hands or feet or anything. It was completely black or very dark brown. And we get up there and it had already gotten into the woods. And we were thinking, man, what the heck was that? It has to be, there has to be an explanation. It's got to be a hunter or a really tall hunter or something. But we look around, there's no driveways, no cars, no trails, nothing, no hint of people or anything. And again, we're miles and miles away from any kind of village or civilization. And we just started freaking out at that point. We're like, what was that? So at that point, my nephew, who's 17, he turned on his phone and we started recording, and we turned around and we wanted to go back and look. And my wife was a little bit spooked at that point, was like, oh, we don't know what it was. Let's go. And because it was a little bit of a weird feeling, like after we realized, I don't think that was human or anything, and at that point we were like, I really think we just saw like a Bigfoot thing. Like there's no other explanation. It also had kind of like a cone-shaped head. And originally when we saw it, it looked, especially from far away, it looked kind of like it could have been, if anything, maybe a hoodie. Say you have a hoodie on and they have the strings pulled tight, it's going to make that little bit of a cone shape in the back of your head. That was kind of the only other explanation at first when we saw it, is, what a weird shape, But at that point, we were like, all right, we're in the middle of nowhere. We've passed maybe a car an hour, very unused road. It's about 75 degrees, middle of the summer. Who the heck is out in the woods tromping around that's at least 7 foot tall, completely dressed in black in a 75-degree day in the middle of nowhere? It makes no sense. So not only that, but when we started recording and so we didn't get it on recording, unfortunately, but we just got like the terrain and our excited expressions about this thing. We started recording and slowly driving back, and I had even rolled down my window and was kind of yelling out the window like, hello, is there someone there? And there was no sound, nothing. Whatever it was clearly hiding from us. And that's kind of odd behavior. If it was a human, you'd think. And so like we're heading back to Fairbanks. So that's the first time we see it and we pass it, right? So it's already in the woods. We turn around. That's when we start filming and calling out. We don't see anything. Well, then of course we have to turn around one more time to get back home. So we'd passed the area 3 times, and nothing. And so you'd really think if it was a human, there would be some kind of, hey, I'm hunting, leave me alone. Not only that, but hunting season doesn't start, as we know, in Alaska for caribou or moose until August. August for caribou and September for moose. Yeah. And so, hunting season doesn't really make any sense either, especially something without a vehicle. So again, this growing up, I never really gave much thought to the existence of Bigfoot. But at that point, we talked about it the whole ride home to Fairbanks, and as soon as we got into cell reception, we started Googling, and there was just no other explanation for what we saw at that point. So we were like, man, I really think that we saw some kind of a Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And one more thing that was kind of odd behavior is, even though it was brief, when we came over that crest and we saw this thing, it never once turned and looked at us or anything, or didn't even acknowledge we were there. It just sped up its pace a little bit and quickly got out of sight. And so that's, again, odd behavior. You'd think for, a human, especially, that at least glance over at the car, or even maybe a typical animal. But Bigfoots are pretty, from what I've heard and studied, especially after that, of course, they're very skittish, it seems like. And they don't want to be found. So that would kind of make a little bit more sense of why it wasn't even acknowledging us or looking at us, but just quickly trying to get out of, sight. Yeah. But, so yeah, at that point, we started, when we got back to reception, we started Googling. Come to find out, there's been several other sightings along the Tanana River, some around Manly, Hot Springs. And so that was kind of exciting. And I'm a fact-based kind of person. I like facts. I don't like superstition and all that. That's just not my thing. And so this really started getting me to think, because you start looking at Bigfoot stuff, you're going to find all kind of hoaxes and a bunch of fluff out there. But at the same time, there's probably the more I've researched it, and I just can't really get it out of my mind ever since back in July. And I've been researching ever since. I've joined a lot of groups, heard hundreds of people's encounters at this point. And it's pretty easy to tell which ones seem legit and sincere, or which ones, of course, are hoaxes or made up. And so, yeah, the more research I've done, I am thoroughly convinced that what we saw was a Bigfoot, and that there's a population of them all over, especially in North America. And it's not a huge population, but there's definitely been a lot of sightings in Alaska. There's been several sightings actually in Manly, and this is kind of interesting. We found just recently an article an interview article of a man from interior Alaska as well, that oddly enough I know. He's passed away about 2 years ago, but he's probably my dad's age, but he grew up in the villages, and he's had 3 encounters. And in his interview, he talked about these 3 different encounters with Bigfoot. And one of them was when he parked his boat overnight, he said just above Manly on the river, and overnighted there with his buddy. They found a dozer trail, and they started walking down this trail in the summer, and they found massive tracks that were about 18 inches long, and about 10 inches wide. And so he was pretty spooked, and they ended up taking off and not camping there. but that is almost like the spot on location of this area that we had seen this Bigfoot. And doing research as well, it sounds like they're pretty they stick to, what's the word, they stick to an area usually.
Yeah, territory.
And so territorial, there we go.
Yeah.
They're pretty territorial. I've heard around 5 to 10 mile radius is typically, their territory that they'll end up staking out and kind of staying around in. And so that was really interesting to hear as well. So I guess up to this point, do you have any questions for me? And then I'll have some follow-up I want to talk about as well.
Yeah. So Ryan, you said you had when you went back through the area, you rolled your window down. Did you get a whiff of anything or any smells?
We didn't. Yeah, unfortunately. And that's the thing, is we've heard from a lot of people that have had closer encounters about how bad they smell. We did have our window down, but we never really stopped because we were a little bit spooked, especially my wife. She was like, all right, let's go. We don't know what that was. We were tempted to get out of the car, but that was my one. I almost always camp and go hiking with, my pistol. And I didn't even remember on that trip to bring my pistol. So I felt a little bit unarmed. And oh, here's one more detail. The spooky thing about it is we had camped about 30 miles from this location we saw this thing the night before. And of course, we had no reason to be spooked, the night before, never giving a thought about something like this. But in hindsight, after we saw this the next day, and it was only about 30 miles from where we had camped the next day with the previous day without a gun, we were really spooked. And so I won't make that mistake again of camping, without at least some sort of a weapon. So, and a good weapon. So
one more follow-up. Was
Yep.
the road you were on, was it a 2-lane road or was it a 1-lane road? And do you remember how many steps it took to get across the road?
It was a dirt road. It's their main road to Manly Hot Springs, Minto, and those are the only two places on this road. And so, I mean, yeah, you can easily pass a car on it, but there's no painted lines or anything. So, I mean, I consider it a 2-lane road, I guess. But as far as when I saw it in the middle of the road, I feel like, and it all happened pretty quick, but I feel like it had probably gotten off the road in about 2, maybe 3 strides is all. And then it was off into the woods, which was another probably, on the side of the road, the cleared area, that was probably another 10, 15 feet. And it probably cleared that distance in another 3 steps, maybe. So yeah, altogether, it was moving pretty quick and abnormally, like, again, it would not be humanly possible to take such big strides and look as natural as it was moving. So, because it was not running, it was just quickly walking.
Right. 7 seconds is actually a pretty good time for a sighting. Usually they're much shorter, like 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So I understand you've gone back to that area and you have some findings.
Yeah. So I had a really busy summer. Didn't really have much time to investigate on this kind of stuff, except for, like I said, I've been Googling and researching stuff and listening to all sorts of other people's encounters for a long time ever since, just because I find it very fascinating. I wanted answers. But yeah, physically, I've not been able to go back there. It's about 3.5 hours from my house. So quite the trip to just, you can't just run out there every day or anything like that. 3.5 hours one way. And, yeah, I told my family about this, of course. And it also helped that 3 of us saw this thing, instead of just one of us. And so, my family's all convinced. They've taken an interest in them, some of them as well. And so I got several brothers and several close friends that I've told this to. And unfortunately, you can't just tell everyone about this stuff because a lot of people don't have a clue, or they'll just, think it's ridiculous. But I have a lot of close friends I've told about this. And so me and a buddy and my brother and my nephew who saw it with me. So the four of us, we planned a trip, and we've kind of been wanting to go back there ever since, but we've just been swamped. And so just in January, so just a couple weeks ago, we finally were able to go back out to this area. Now, we really wanted to, of course, ideally it'd be awesome to find it again, but the chances are going to be kind of slim. But we wanted to, have every possibility of that. And so we brought with us a GoPro that we left running on our dash the whole time. We brought several cameras. We all brought guns for self-defense to be armed. And we brought a drone, and a pretty good drone that's able to zoom in and everything and go out pretty far. So we went up there, and unfortunately it was about 10 below all day. And so we also brought our snow machines. So we were kind of planning, if we found any fresh tracks, that we would, there was four of us, we were all armed. We were going to, pay close attention, but we were going to follow the tracks on our snow machines if we found some fresh ones. So we headed out there. Lots of tracks along the way of moose, caribou up there, other animals. We found some moose tracks that were fresh. We saw the moose. We got out and looked at the tracks, and moose are pretty incredible as far as they're able to have their back feet go into this almost the same footprint as their front foot went into. So they almost look like they're bipedal as they're walking, but without fail, on a lot of the moose tracks we were looking at, they every maybe 10 foot, their back foot would miss the front footprint in the snow, and therefore it would throw off the pattern of just a step by step, bipedal tracks, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that they were a lot narrower. The moose tracks were always a lot narrower. They were probably about 6 inches usually is the width on them, and then they're usually about a foot long, it felt like. And then another thing about the moose tracks is, without fail, they would have drag marks in between each footprint, or in between almost every footprint. And so anyways, we were able to get a really good idea of what the moose tracks look like. We were able to see some, fox, maybe it looked like some wolf. I've seen a lot of bear tracks hunting and growing up and stuff like that. So anyways, we didn't see really any kind of possible tracks of a Bigfoot until we got within 5 miles of where we had seen the Bigfoot this summer. And so at that point, when we saw on the side of the road these step-by-step tracks, right, coming off the road, we, paused. We were already going slow. Of course, we were searching for these for good tracks. When we saw these footprints, we got out, we started looking at them, and we were shocked. And so you saw the pictures I had of these tracks, but they are about a 3-foot spread with each step. And this snow was about 2 feet deep. So here we are in our bunny boots, which bunny boots are, they're kind of big. We're stepping alongside these tracks, trying to, imagine and trying to take a huge stride. And it was impossible for us to make the same strides without doing almost the splits and making a huge mess of the snow in between, because, we couldn't do it without tons of drag marks, etc. And so we were able to quickly rule out that these were not people tracks. Now, conveniently, when we went out there that morning, it was lightly snowing. And so we were able to tell what was very fresh and what was not. Unfortunately, these tracks, who knows, they were probably, it looked like about 2 weeks old. So we didn't bother unloading the snow machines and following them, because we could tell that they were definitely not brand new or anything. But these, the spread on these things, about 3 feet. They were about, now again, we think they're about 2 weeks old, but this, each footprint, when you step in the snow and then you lift your foot out, especially in deep snow, it's going to kind of cave in a little bit around you.
Right.
So, and yet these prints were probably around, I'd say about 10 inches wide. Now, as you probably saw from the picture, the front of the track is a lot wider than the back, where like the heel of something would be. But even the heel area was probably a good, I don't know, 6 to 8 inches wide. Front of them was probably a little bit bigger than 10 inches. And then they were probably about 1.5 feet as far as length. And that was with, snow probably caving back in around them, etc. So we followed these ourselves into the woods, and they continually, they never had that random step that the moose would sometimes have, where they get off the normal step by step. We followed them on foot probably 50-60 feet into the woods, and they continued that way the whole time. And then we went back to the vehicle, got the drone up in the air, and flew the drone out, followed these tracks. Now there was kind of like a barrier of trees and stuff that was a little bit thick. Then it opened up behind this barrier of trees, and it was kind of, it was a kind of a big area with a whole bunch of other tracks back there: moose, probably wolf, fox, caribou. Tons of tracks in this area, and yet these prints we were following just went all the way back in there. And so we followed them with the drone probably at least a couple 100 feet, maybe more. The drone could get about 2,000 feet away from the vehicle before it would lose reception. It could zoom in, had really good capabilities. So anyways, yeah, we followed these tracks. They kind of went back in there. It looked like they had followed some moose prints for a while, and then eventually we the drone battery would last. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, it was about 10 below, so we had about 15 minutes per battery charge on the drone before we'd have to fly it home, recharge it in the vehicle. We had 2 batteries, so we were able to switch that out a little bit. But anyway, so at that point we kept on going towards Manly, and we found maybe 2 other sets, all within about a 5 to 10 mile radius of where we'd seen the Bigfoot the summer, the July previous. And the other 2 sets of tracks we saw, they easily could have been the same creature that made the first set. We weren't as sure of the second and third pairs of tracks, though, as we were of the first. And so the pictures you saw were of the most convincing ones we saw. When we got back into reception, we searched and came up with some of the as confirmed of tracks as you can from other people's Bigfoots. And that was another thing. They kind of, how a human's heel is cupped on the inside of our foot. Right. These tracks seem to be cupped on the outside slightly. And we thought that was really weird at first. And we're like, what is that? Well, the other, Bigfoot tracks we were able to see when we got back into reception, they also seem to have a slight cup on the outside of each foot as well. And we thought that was really interesting when we saw that. And so that was pretty exciting. We sent these tracks, not saying anything about what we thought it was, but we sent them to some other friends that this one hunter trapper that he's native Alaskan, been in, trapping and hunting a heck of a lot more than me his whole life. And we asked him what he thought these tracks were, and he had no idea. He said, I've never seen anything like those. And he said, possibly the closest I could say is maybe wolf. And yet the wolf is not going to jump perfectly step by step for miles that way,
Right.
So or hundreds of feet that way. So anyways, that was pretty exciting, and we just felt pretty validated that after this whole fall and now this the past couple months, just wanting to go back to this place, really trying to find some evidence of what we saw. And then we get back within 5 miles and we find these tracks that just so far are unidentifiable as anything else. So it's been pretty exciting. So we have a plan to go back um, sometime in the spring before the snow melts, but yet it's warm enough, probably, in the 40 degrees or so, where we can have more sunlight, where the drone battery will last hopefully double as long, so we get more time scoping out. Because we were able to see with the drone any movement pretty easily. We found about 5 moose with the drone, and so even though you're hundreds of feet up, uh, kind of a high profile look, out over valleys and everything is what we were doing. We were able to see the moose movement pretty quick, and then zoom in and and see what they were. So we definitely realized that the drone is our best bet at finding something. And so, but we need more battery time because that 10 below was killing the battery too quick. So that's our plan. And we're really hoping next time we could find something on footage.
Yeah, I really like the pictures you sent. They're really intriguing. I did a video a couple of weeks ago in which I had gone out on a trail, and I saw some, moose, the typical double step moose track, and I commented in the video, I kind of held the camera down at an angle so you were just looking across at the track. And I was like, now see, if I was just walking by and saw that, I would want to go and investigate that further, because it looks like a human shaped, footprint. But then I picked the camera up and looked down inside it, and you can clearly see the hoof marks. And I was like, but from back there, it looks intriguing because it looked like bipedal steps. But yeah, definitely the ones you sent, they do not look like moose tracks. And what I see pretty commonly is rabbit tracks, where rabbits will sink down in the snow where they're hopping around, and it doesn't look like that either. So yeah, really intriguing.
Yeah, and that'd be one heavy rabbit too. Because I mean, I've seen lots of rabbit tracks. They do, when they bounce, sometimes their whole body will make this imprint, and it is kind of hard to tell sometimes. But yet, this, like I said, this snow was about 2 feet deep, and rabbits are so light, they'd never go sink down even close to as deep as these tracks were as well. And then of course, rabbits wouldn't have the slightly staggered continual step, tracks, of course. So yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I wanted to explain for our lower 48 viewers that don't know, bunny boots are large insulated boots that are worn in very cold weather. I sometimes I forget that people that listen to this, they don't necessarily live in Alaska or live in cold climates. So every now and then I'll get a what is this, or what are you talking about? What is that? So I try to sometimes explain Alaska terms for people that live in the lower 48 that don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, we'll stay tuned and let you know what we find in the spring. But we're really excited, and especially the fact that most other people that have spent a lot of time researching, it does sound like they're territorial. And so the fact that several people have claimed to see them around Manly, and then we were able to see these tracks within 5 miles where we saw the Bigfoot, it definitely was encouraging that there's probably one or maybe a family of them living in that area, and therefore we're hoping to continually go and eventually find some evidence.
Yeah. Sounds awesome. I just, be careful that you don't, one, be careful safety wise and defense wise. But it sounds like, it sounds like you're on top of that. But number two, be careful not to pressure them too much, because you don't want to push them out of the area. But,
exactly.
I think you might be onto something there, man. I'm really excited for you, and hope maybe that I can come up and look with you one of these days. I've got okay thermal scope. It's one of the cheapest you can get, but I do have a pretty nice night vision monocular. So when you guys,
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, when you guys get geared up to go back up there, maybe reach out to me.
Give you a shout. Yeah. Because we've been really talking about how we want to get some kind of infrared, especially because that would really make things easier. So
yeah, you can get the FLIR scouts for I think they're like $400 or $500, and I mean it's a big investment for just for a piece of equipment like that. But I use it all the time at home. I'll before I take my dogs out in the winter, sometimes I'll go out and I'll FLIR the wood line to make sure there's no moose out there so I can take my dogs out and safely. So,
Yeah, good idea.
yeah. Well, anyway, Ryan, I appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed your tale, and I think everybody else is going to love it too. So just keep us updated. If you get any updates, we'll be sure and bring you back on. And you got anything you want to tell the people out there about Bigfoot?
I would just say, I, like I said earlier, I never gave it much thought, but at this point now, I'm thoroughly convinced that, that what we saw was a Bigfoot, and I'm thoroughly convinced that there are a population of them in North America. So keep on enjoying the outdoors, but just be careful. And I think some of the best footage that I've seen so far captured on video that I would have loved to capture something similar myself is there's a guy in Banff National Park or close by, a hunter that recorded. And if you just Google Banff YouTube Banff Bigfoot sighting, there is incredible a sighting of a hunter that ran into one that was feeding on a deer carcass and was trying to evade him by standing perfectly still. And the guy took a lot of footage of it. You could see it swaying a little bit back and forth, and then he zooms in on its face and you could see it open its mouth. And it is just definitely the most undeniable footage I've seen so far. So I check that out, Banff Bigfoot. And just enjoy the woods, but be careful. And I really, from everything I've read, it doesn't sound like they're, probably going to hurt you as long as you don't mess with them, but just never know. So be careful. And I'll be in touch with you. And if we have more to update, we'll do another interview.
All right. Sounds good, Ryan. And you know what? Welcome to the Bigfoot world, buddy.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. All right, guys. Big thank you to Ryan. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your encounter with us. I appreciate it so much. And I know the people listening really enjoy hearing these types of things. We're going to keep in contact with Ryan if we have any more information or he has any more info or evidence or anything like that he wants to share with us. We will be sure and get that out to you. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to have something special coming up next week, or not next week, but the week after. And I hope you guys enjoy it. It's kind of a surprise, so just stay tuned. And we'll be back at you here pretty soon. So you guys stay warm and keep shoveling that snow, especially you guys down there in Texas. Bye-bye.